Okay, so hello Tony, my name is Raewyn Steven. I'll be your interviewer today. So I'm just going to come with a couple of questions right here. So I'll just start off with, tell me about yourself and why you're here.
Kia ora, Raewyn. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I think it's really important, and it's such a great opportunity not only for myself but other candidates to participate in something like this, because I don't think anything like this has ever been done before, and especially for the wider public to actually watch it and to maybe learn more about local politics that they wouldn't have known before. So it's really big mihi to you and the work that you're doing. So anyway, about myself, I was raised here in Whakatāne. My grandparents are from Waimana. They used to have a farm in Nukaho, and then they sold the farm and they moved into town. And they had a house down King Street, and we used to look down the end of the driveway and there were paddocks. That's where Douglas Street was. So all those houses and that there were paddocks. There was this, later on, there was this where the Destiny Church was actually a pub. It was called the Tainui or Waka. And I remember my uncles and that going down there. But anyway, getting away from the topic, my grandfather, he was part of building the War Memorial Hall. So we've got photos of him and my dad when they were part of building that. So in that time, our communities used to know each other. So everybody knew everybody, the neighbours. Back then, when you had a fence at your house in town, it was only really like an ornamental fence. You know, it was just one like little, like one brick high, you know, and just sort of had pretty things on it, you know. Whereas now I've noticed the fences are like 6 foot high. Nobody sees the house or anything like that. So our communities have sort of changed a lot, yeah. And I suppose for me it's looking at going back to those types of values where, you know, all of us used to know each other, but the parents did. So they'd know, oh, you're Wayne's girls, and they'd know, oh, there's Craig's boys, you know, and we used to be able to play in our neighbourhood, and we knew that we'd be looked after by everybody, because everyone, well, basically they would know if you're getting up to mischief, they'd tell your dad because they knew who your dad was. But looking at communities becoming more connected and with each other, because that's how we're going to build that resilience facing the challenges ahead.
So what are you passionate about?
So I am passionate about community. I'm passionate about people. One of my reasons why I'm standing for council, and a reason why a lot of the things I get myself into is because of my kids, and because of how I want my children to see themselves in the future. And standing for council is so that my tamariki and all our tamariki can see themselves reflected in the leadership of our communities, can see themselves, see their worldview or how they see the world as part of what makes the decisions in our community. If we really want to look at how we can change things for the better, we really need to destabilise the binary. And what I'm meaning by that is that we're used to a society where there is a centre or dominant demographic that is part of the system, focuses on that, or it's Eurocentric, I should say. And so everything else that comes in contact with that always seems to be on the outside. And whoever's sort of Eurocentric, so whoever's in the middle. Eurocentric is to do with basically Western way of thinking. So that's more dominant. So our society or the way our legal system is put together, the way that our government is run, is more coming from a Western view of society. And so when that is the centre of everything else that tries to come into that space, like Māori or Indigenous people or anybody else who's on, whether it's to be our LGB community, they seem to be on the outside or in opposition. Yeah. So there always seems to be a bit of competition on somebody having to be the winner, or somebody to. There seems to be like I'm not saying that's always a fight there, but it's trying to find that balance. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess.
So if somebody is the centre all the time, then that becomes the normal. That becomes the normal way of thinking and being. And what happens is that our others can feel left out. So if we're able to destabilise that, if we're able to shift that so that everybody's in the same space, where everybody's able to share that space, and it's not about one person or one particular group being the one and only main group, but everybody actually all has a space in which they can be part of society, in which they can be part of making decisions about our whole society. Then those are the things that we need to be looking towards. And it doesn't mean knocking out somebody else to then put
it's
yourself...
Just about, like, actually opening the whole...
Yeah, opening it so that and that's what I mean by destabilising the binary. Binary means two. So then you've got always got two, one up against each other.
Yeah. So we're just like actually becoming one whole
Yeah.
group.
So it's more like allowing more than just the two, so they're not just in opposition. It's that if you allow more people around the table in more spaces, then you can't necessarily be opposed to everybody. Everybody has a place and a role to play when they're sitting around that table. And what happens is really exciting stuff. So when you have lots of different perspectives around that table, it becomes really creative. When you remove the whole thing about it being about power or being the one who has control, we can come up with so many different solutions. Does that make sense? Yeah, and you know that when you get a whole group of people together and you think, hey, why don't we do this? And then all the ideas start flowing, and then somebody else comes along and goes, yeah, I can do that part. And, you know, it starts making itself happen.
What is your fondest memory?
What is one of my fondest memories? It's a really hard question, but I keep on thinking about my grandparents. And I think it was being able to catch the horse, to cross the river, to go and collect fern bracken. So that's fern growing on the hills. And collecting that so that we can take it back all our nannies used to plant the gardens, and so when they would harvest, they would all sit in the different paddocks. Each of them would have their rows, and they would sort the piles of all the different types of kumara, all the different types of potato. And our job was to go and get the fern bracken across the road. So we'd get to go on the horse. That was the cool thing. Get to go across the river, pick all this fern bracken, because we would have to line the bins with the fern bracken when they sorted the piles, and all those different piles of potatoes and kumara would go into those. Usually it used to be a pit in the ground, but they had these dark sheds where they would have it. And I used to just love being around the nannies because they didn't speak English. I only spoke Māori. And as long as we got all that work done, we could go for a swim. That's all we ever wanted to do. But it was also too the smell of the land and the fern. And every time we would go get those potatoes or those riwai, that smell was always there. And because all our families used to come together, because everyone would take their share of the harvest or take their part. And it was just having a choice time with our cousins and playing. And it was just fun. And whenever I smell the fern, that's what it makes me think. I suppose that's my fondest memory, is something like that. Yeah.
Sorry. So, who is someone you admire or look up to? I guess your grandparents, right?
Yes. Well, of course, there's my grandparents, but I suppose there's my the lawnmower. Just mowing the lawn. Is my dad. My dad is someone who I, of course, love and admire, and he does so much. He's such a humble man, and he's such a hard worker, and he's always pono. He's just always true to himself, to everything, you know. He's always just, being very respectful with everybody all the time. It doesn't matter who they are or where they're from. And he just cares, genuinely cares and looks after people. And there's another person I admire. And it's really exciting. Last week I was sort of joking because Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is a politician in America. So she's Puerto Rican. And so she's one of the few women of colour who are in politics at the moment, and she's really young. And she's just amazing. She's just really amazing in terms of that she is challenging that binary, and she is asking the hard questions, and sort of showing up how things in society, aren't that great. But anyway, I thought I'd be cheeky and ring her. This little Maori girl in New Zealand, because her politics really inspire me in terms of what she's doing. Plus, I also sort of copied her billboard style from her. So I rang her offices to leave a message. Well, they weren't there, so I left a message just telling her about how she's inspired a lot of mana wahine here with her politics. And yeah, I wanted to leave that message. Wow, I talked to them this morning, and it was her officers just acknowledging my message. And I thought, oh my God, that's just so amazing. So they said that they were really grateful that her politics have reached so far, all the way to New Zealand, and they're really thankful that she's inspiring people that far. And they really encouraged me to write a request. They said they don't know if they could come to New Zealand. I said that would be amazing if she could come to New Zealand. I was talking to a friend who said, because her initials, she's known as AOC. So one of my friends said to me, we should have a campaign that says, get AOC to AOT, to Aotearoa, because she's amazing. But yeah, that was pretty cool. So I admire her in politics.
Thank you. So, tell me about your youth. You kind of already did, but so tell me about that.
So in my younger days, before I had all my children, I always said to myself when I was younger, I'm not going to have kids because I was never a baby person. I ended up with the most kids in my family, but that's okay. So before I had my tamariki, I did studies in visual arts and design at Wairakei Polytech at Rotorua, and then I had the opportunity to go to the far north, which is where my mum is from, and one of my aunties is a master weaver there, so I went up there to weave, and then I became an arts tutor up there, and then I also got involved in the housing sector that was up there with the organisation Te Aupōuri Trust Board, who I work for. And then I eventually ended up managing a rural housing program which was for the whole of the far north. And so with part of that program for Te Aupōuri, we were also part of forming a Māori housing network in which we looked at developing policy and strategies for Māori housing to improve Māori housing. So I was very fortunate to be part of that program, which enabled whānau to have 3% deposit. So they attended a workshop for 12 weeks, which they got a certificate that gave them 3% deposit through Housing New Zealand. And I was fortunate to support whānau through their Māori land process to be able to have a house built on there or to have a house relocated. It's just so rewarding. One of my fond memories is that my baby was 6 months old, my first baby, and I was up at 3 a.m. Not just with the baby. I was following a house that was being transported right up to the top of New Zealand, so in Te Hapua, for an elderly couple that we had been living in a caravan. So that was really awesome that we were able to be there and part of project managing for that house to become their proper home, because they were living in a caravan and container.
So did they have to like apply for it, or did people just acknowledge that they were living in a caravan?
No, they came on the workshop, so they participated on the workshop. So what we did is, when I became a manager for the housing program, is that I wanted the workshops to go to the people, because before they used to just have it in one place and everybody had to get there. But because the far north is so spread out, and Te Hapua is about an hour and a half away from Kaitaia, it was like, no, we need to take the workshops to those areas, because they're the ones who are living in containers or old caravans. Yeah, I know, government programs. Never mind. So we adapted it. And the other one is that I adapted it from being 12 weeks, is that I put it into block courses so that our rural areas had that, so that they were able to go through and receive the same information. And then part of that was that helping them with that information of what they had to do to budget and save for their deposit, their lawyers' fees, their valuation fees, and also being able to let them know how much that they can qualify for, and how much more income they would need if they wanted to qualify for a higher amount if they needed it. But we were really fortunate back then that house prices weren't so high. Interest rates were really, really high, so that was a problem. But we managed to help, or in my time there, we helped 100 whānau into homes, into home ownership. And that was really awesome mahi, and I really loved it. Yeah.
That's so cool.
And then I had all these children. But I mean, I carried on studying and doing things and doing mahi. And then once I had my fourth baby, I came home to my dad back in Whakatāne, so that they could be brought up with their koro.
Alright. So, do you think that if you grew up in different circumstances, whether or not they would have altered your childhood and how you are today?
Probably yes. I mean, there's always that thing of nurture and nature. But I think all of us are really lucky to be being brought up in a country like New Zealand. I mean, yes, we have a lot of our own issues in that, but we have such a beautiful place, and we have a society that enables us to challenge things that aren't right, that we have the ability to protest, that we have the ability to make change. And I think we're very fortunate as a country that can happen. You know, in other countries, people die when they try and stand up for what they believe in, and we're so lucky that we're not in that type of environment. But it doesn't stop us from not challenging things. You know, because just because we've got it good doesn't mean that we stop challenging things that aren't right. But what it does do is it allows us to champion for other people who can't. And if we're able to do that, then everybody wins.
Thank you. Alrighty, so what were your goals and aspirations when you were younger? I think you already told us that.
Well, I really thought after doing the managing the housing program that I was basically on a career to Wellington. I'm going to into Wellington. I'm going to be, you know, a career public servant. Maybe I'll go to work for TPK. Maybe I'll be in housing, you know, and I'll work my way up the ladder in the different public service sector. Yeah, that's where I was going. And then I met a handsome Ngāti Kuri man up there, and I ended up with my 4 beautiful sons. And interesting enough, his dad was a politician. So his dad was Machu Rata, so he was quite a significant Māori MP. He also started the first sort of party for Māori, which was the Mana Motuhake Party. And he was quite, One of the awesome things that he did was that Machirata was part of putting through the Treaty of Waitangi Act 1975. Now, if we didn't have that act, we wouldn't have the Waitangi Tribunal. If we didn't have that act, we wouldn't have had a space in which we would be able to get te reo recognised as an official language. We wouldn't have had the space in which we would have Māori radio stations. We wouldn't have had the space where we have kura kaupapa kohana reo. And we also would not have had these treaty settlements where our grievances can be heard, and where redress can be had, and where our own people can have their own ability economically to be able to provide for their people. And that's huge. And I think one of the, rather than just the settlements or the money, and by the way, the settlement monies that have been received to date are 0.1% in comparison to the amount of money that has been given out by government for other things. I think there's this huge myth that people believe that Māoris are taking all the government's money. It's just not true. No, it's a myth that's created to ensure that we remain separated. But he did a huge amount of stuff up in the far north. And in the far north, when I was working up there were politicians all over the place. So it was just normal. Hone Harawira was just across the road. And when we were part of doing the Foreshore Seabed Bill, we were part of going around getting submissions from everybody. We were working with him. In the end, we supported him by setting up the first Māori Party branch up in Kaitaia. We opened the first Māori Party account, and supported him in his campaign to be in Parliament. And then we had people like I think it was Sue Bradford. She was a Green Party. She lived in Aipara, which is about 15 minutes away from Kaitaia. Calvin Davis, who's now a minister, he was the intermediate principal. I remember us going down there, all us sort of young girls going down there, going, did you see the new principal? Because he was pretty good looking back in those days. So we went to his pōhiri so we could have a look, going, he's married, But he was always a pretty serious dude. And Shane Jones, he was a trustee at the organisation I worked at before he became a minister. So that whole environment up there is used to having politicians and politics. But I think when you're anybody, I suppose, but when you grow up around a marae and you've got whānau and you've got hapuhui, you're always inevitably going to be in politics. It's all politics. Even in your whānau there's politics. But yeah, that's me up there.
That's cool. Alright, so who are the youth of Kopeopeo to you?
Pardon?
The youth of Kopeopeo.
The youth of Kopeopeo, people like yourselves. I think it's our rangatahi, but also to the youth of Kopeopeo are all those who previously were youth, but have a connection to Kopeopeo, and also the organisation itself, Youth Kopeopeo. I've been involved with working with them, and they've been amazing with the project that we did out in Waimana with the Mahora Te Waimana mural. And so they were part of helping with pulling together contacts, which enabled us to apply for funding and to bring young tūhoi artists like Te Haunui and them home, because Te Haunui is from Waimana, and bring school children together where they were able to do a workshop and design a mural, and part of painting that mural too. So that was really awesome. In Waimana. So when you drive into Waimana, one of the first buildings you'll see is the mural. It's got the mural and it's saying Te Waimana. So just letting you know, you're in Waimana. But that's part of leading up towards another project that's happening out there, is that we're establishing multi-courts, sports courts, and redoing the lights, getting in preparation for the Tūhoi Ahi Day. So that's happening next year in April, and it's estimated there's about 30,000 people who are going to be coming into the area for that.
Okay, so that's cool. So, what do you think it's like to be a young person in Kopeopeo?
I'm not sure what it's like now. I mean, I still think I'm young. I think there's just a lot more more going on for young people nowadays. When in our days we didn't have cell phones. Oh my gosh, I sound old now, but we didn't have information constantly at beckoning us, or calling us. We only had a phone, and if somebody rang you and you weren't home, you went home. You went around to see them at their house. And so I think there's a lot more worry. There's a lot more things that fill up young people's minds because you've got these instant messages or these instant demands. And they might be not asking you to do something, but it's the demand of looking at something else while you're somewhere else, you know. So I think the challenges are maybe, I don't know, I'd have to ask you what the challenges are, is finding that time of a space of quiet. I'm not sure. What are they? So what do you think that how things are for the youth of Kopeopeo right now?
I guess that there are kind of like you have to be very aware about your surroundings. Not because of the but because of the people that are around you and because of the area that you're in. That's what I think that they're being. Yeah, just being self-aware about like where you're going, who you're with, and what's around you. I guess, but yeah.
Is that a safety thing?
I'm not quite sure because because in Kopeopeo there's different people, different stereotypes such as like gangs and stuff. But yeah.
So there's just different gangs, and so you're just very aware about all the different groups.
Yeah, so just being like self-aware about everything that's around you. But yeah.
What do you think that the council can do to improve things for youth of Kopeopeo?
Honestly, I wouldn't even know. Like, I wouldn't know where exactly to start with that because it's not the actual place; it's the people.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't know. But yeah, that's just me. Yeah. What do you think our young people feel should be important to our decision makers?
What do I think our young people should feel to be important to our decision makers? I think for me is what I want to find out from you, you know. And if you're not sure of what those answers are, it's just like, well, how can we provide information that gets you informed about different aspects so that then you can really you can sort of say, oh, I get what you mean. Okay, yeah, this is my idea for this. This is my idea for that. I think if we're able to provide that kind of support so that you're your own voice, you're not a voice where we come to you, just get your little details and then walk away with that. That's actually your voice remains your voice the whole journey through. And part of that would be that wherever your views and things are going or being used for, that you're actually sitting alongside those spaces so that you can carry on having input, because then the more that you learn, the more you might be able to add something to that, but it still has to come from your voice. It can't be us adding something to something you said a year ago, but you've changed your mind on it because you know more. Is that we need to have youth like yourselves along the journey of those projects, because your views may change because of more information that you receive. So that growth has to happen so that whatever is the end result, we're getting the best out of it. It's not an end result over here 2 years later from something you thought about a year ago, but it's changed, you know. So you need to be part of being in the whole growth of that, because that grows youth. You know, that grows a succession, and that's what it should be about. It shouldn't be about youth just being over here, we go and see them. It should be about having them involved, because part of succession is that you're learning all the parts let go with something. Not just the bit where you come in and say your 5 minutes and then leave. It's like, what's the rest of the dynamics of how that works? How do you do these things? How am I more involved in this? Yeah. But I understand we've got Nendor soon, so I want to give him time too.